Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of Supplement Sense. Today we're going to start a series on bad diet advice because there's a lot of it out there, and quite honestly, I'm tired of hearing it. Yeah, it may just be an excuse for me to rant a little bit, but hopefully you learn something in the process. So today, the bad diet advice that we're going to confront is this. Cut out carbs, known to other people as carbs are evil, starve yourself, etc. This is awful advice for a few reasons. First of all, it's very generalized, and generalizations never really helped anybody. Why are carbs supposedly bad? Why should you not eat them? I like to tell people that any diet advice that tells you to cut out entire food groups is probably advice that you should be wary of, which is pretty much all diet advice, if we're being honest. So let's analyze this and see if there's anything we can learn from it. Why is it that we're supposed to cut out carbs? Well, the proposition behind this, if we're to get a little more specific, would be carbs are bad. But what is it about carbs that are bad? Why are carbs bad? Is everything about carbs bad? What a lot of people don't realize is that carbohydrate refers to multiple different things. Carbs means sugars, simple and complex, fiber, soluble and insoluble, and then there's some other stuff that bears really no dietary consequence, so we won't discuss that. But when people say cut out carbs and that carbs are bad, do they mean all of these things are bad? I would hope not. Obviously, we know that fiber is good for us, and most people have a concept that complex carbohydrates are good for you, so where do we go from here? Well, most people, when they say cut out carbs, are probably meaning to cut out sugars, because sugars are the calorie-yielding portion of carbs. So I guess sugars are bad, right? Why would sugars be bad? Again, probably has to do with the fact that they yield calories, but why calories from sugar in specific? Well, the bottom line is what we know: calories in excess can lead to weight gain. Bottom line, especially calories from carbohydrates. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, why? What's the difference between the way calories from carbs behave and what about them is the problem? Bottom line is something that we all know: moderation is the key. Not too much, not too little. But what happens when we eat too many carbs and the sugars that come from them? What's the problem there? To demonstrate that, I have a few things, so check this out. Imagine that the water in this pitcher symbolizes the calories that you might consume from carbohydrates. And we have this container here that represents your specific calorie intake from carbs that day. And notice here for a second that we're talking just about calories from carbs. We're not dealing with proteins and fats right now because while they do yield calories, they behave very differently in your body. So we're going to leave those for a different day. One more thing I want to point out is the arrow here. The little arrow is showing us the limit that we need from carbs that day. The problem is, if you go over the limit and eat too many carbs, your body needs to do something about that because it doesn't like to have excess sugar floating around in your bloodstream. So what happens? Insulin comes to the rescue and helps your body take that excess sugar to cells that need it for energy. And if there's any left over, which in this case there is, it gets stored as fat. Congratulations, you just got this much fatter, which you may not be happy about, but this is what happens. The reason being, your body doesn't want excess sugar floating around in the bloodstream. Chronic hyperglycemia, we call this, can lead to many different problems, those being cardiovascular disease, nerve damage or neuropathy, kidney damage or failure, cataracts in the eyes, poor circulation, teeth and gum infections, skin problems, etc. The list goes on and on. If that sounded familiar to you, it's because those are symptoms of mismanaged diabetes over the years, and that's not a good thing. By the way, simple and complex carbohydrates, though they are both converted into sugar, behave a little bit differently. Simple sugar will be converted into excess blood sugar faster than complex sugars. So the advantage of complex carbohydrates is that they will take longer to digest, which means there's a less likelihood that there would be excess sugar in the blood over a period of time. That's why you want to choose the complex carbohydrates over the simple ones. And as most people know, that's like selecting whole wheat bread over processed white bread. So that's the bottom line. This is really why you want to watch your carb intake, but you don't want to cut them out completely because, again, you still need energy. Carbohydrates are your body's first energy source. They're needed for your brain to function. They're needed for your muscles. If you don't eat enough carbohydrates, you might feel faint, weak, tired. You may even pass out, which is what we call hypoglycemia. While we're on the topic, it's a good chance to discuss insulin sensitivity, which is something you may have heard of before. What does that mean? Well, a person who has very, very high insulin sensitivity is very effective at taking this excess sugar out of the bloodstream, as represented by this larger container here. What that means is their body takes it out much, much more quickly, which can actually be a problem. In that case, your body might drop in blood sugar too much, and again, you end up with those symptoms: fatigue, weariness, perhaps passing out and fainting, etc. In other people who have a low insulin sensitivity, it means that their body does not respond well to insulin, like a slotted spoon instead of the ladle. What happens in this case is their body tries to remove the excess sugar from the blood, but it's ineffective. What causes this is years and years of eating too much sugary food too frequently. Your insulin just doesn't become as effective anymore. This is also what we refer to as type 2 diabetes, and it's definitely a problem. One good reason why you should avoid eating too much sugary foods too often. But again, moderation. We're not talking about completely cutting carbohydrates out of the picture, because you still need them for energy. As a matter of fact, a lot of sources will recommend 40% of your calories come from carbohydrates. But it comes down to how you choose them. So make sure that you avoid added sugars, extra sugary things like soda, which is terrible for you. Eat your complex instead of the simple sugars, and also enjoy desserts and alcohol sparingly, because again, high sugar content spikes the blood sugar too often, fat storage, or low insulin sensitivity, aka diabetes, and the list of complications goes on and on. So I hope that cleared up the picture for you a little bit. Hopefully you understand the reasoning behind the cut out carbs mythos in diet and exercise. It's not a good idea to completely eliminate carbs because, again, primary energy source. But don't eat too much, otherwise that can happen. Well, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share if you found the information useful, and we'll find you next time on Supplement Sense. So the most common objections that people raise to why they don't take a multivitamin is, hey, I eat really healthy, and I eat really healthy all the time.
It has a little bit of carbohydrate and fat content. Not hugely significant, but maybe 5 grams of each or less.